Brett Bean. BrettBean.com.
Hey everybody, Brett Bean here on the third video. So this video is going to be about really cleaning up that pencil drawing into an ink overdrawing, so we can use that as a basis for our colors and our overall character design and visual communication for the other people. So a lot of thick to thin. I'm using Sketchbook Pro, and let's take it away. Alright, so we are back in Sketchbook Pro, and I have taken my layer and turned the opacity down quite a bit. You know, you can do it whatever you're comfortable with. I know people who, so when I do my comic book work, that underdrawing would normally be blue, and I would print that out at 10% opacity, and then I would traditionally ink on paper. So for comics and for personal work, I do that a lot of the time. And then if it's for client work, it's not so important to have, you know, a finished piece of paper or anything like that. So it'll usually be just digital work, but I know a lot of people will either turn it a natural color like an orange or a blue to sort of fake that blue pencil line. And you could actually just draw with a regular pencil and then just convert the color to blue. That's easy. But for this tutorial, I just kind of took the opacity down, and you can see I try to be pretty loose and pretty open with the interpretation of the lines. I try not to be too precious, because what I've also come to find is when I try to make the line perfect the way the underdrawing is, it doesn't work out. Here, trying to show the contour of where that nose comes down to the center of the line, making sure that that's actually still correct, and to show you that that's something I'm still thinking about, even though I don't have it in the drawing. It is still there. So at the beginning of my career, it was always there. I drew it in. I drew in all the contour lines. I drew in all the stuff. And then as you get comfortable and you start finding little, I wouldn't say them cheats, but you find like you're cheating time, right? You're like, oh great, I don't need that anymore. I now trust myself that that's in the right position. Or you've done it enough time that when something feels completely off or wonky, you can adjust. So you don't need to spend the time to do that compared to earlier in career. But by all means, I know people who continue to do it that way. I just kind of got rid of that one. Unless I find something egregious and I go, I don't know why this is wrong, but something's wrong. And then I go back and sort of like retweak it to see if I can figure it out. But I do a lot of thick to thin lines. In your file, whether it be Photoshop or Manga Studio or Sketchbook Pro or Procreate or whatever other pro word usage for your program design, get used to having your pen having pressure sensitivity. It's very hard not to get used to that, and it can help when you work traditionally as well. That's why I try not to go back and futz with a line over and over again. I accept the lines that I make, because that's what I would have to do if I was to ink this traditionally. Normally I would, but it's just so much easier to record a video digitally, so that's why you're getting the digital one. But I find working traditionally extremely satisfying and fun. So a lot of personal projects end up going that route. They're just not as easy to film for me. I try to just let the ink lines be, and again, it mimics the pluses and minuses of working traditionally. If I go back and I noodle each line over and over again, one, I'll lose energy in the line, and for me, energy is more important than perfection. A perfect line is not nearly as interesting to my eye as energy and flow. So that's a battle I had to fight. And I think everybody, as you design, as you become an inker, as you work, you will find things that you gravitate towards and go, oh, I like this about my art, or I like this about art in general. And you will try to mimic that until you're no longer mimicking, you're doing, right? So there's no wrong answer for you, but the whole reason you practice, besides to get better at your craft, to improve your hand-eye coordination, to learn things, but it's also to start discerning and having an eye as a designer and an artist for yourself of what you like, what you dislike, and what you're going to add and take away from your art, right? Because you can't add everything and you can't take away everything. So your mind's eye is going to start seeing patterns and things that you like, and you will gravitate towards those things. So me, I'm thinking about my next stage in color. So I know that those little wispy hairs and things, I'm probably going to color. So I know that when I get to that stage, oh, I'm going to color that a specific color, and that's not going to just stay black. I'm still adding that variation, that idea of hair to skin ratio, and making some weird marks, because again, I don't like digital art that feels like digital art. For me. Other people love it, right? And you can do whatever you want with your art, because that's the beauty of it, right? It's your choice. But for me, I like seeing the mistakes. I like feeling like it's real and fresh. And that's the art I like looking at. So that's the art I try to recreate even digitally, and just accept it for my faults as a designer. You know, I would usually use whiteout in a ink drawing, and I'm not really doing too much of that. But I'm just trying to get down all my marks. You can see the thick to thin. Now I'm just kind of adding a little bit of variety, and maybe he's got a couple straggly hairs around. So I have a heavy hand when it comes to inking. So I try to use a small brush so my thickest line doesn't go so giant huge. In this stage, I don't think that I am going to ink inside the toes and the fingers, because I want that to be more of a color shift compared to the pencil drawing, which is explaining to myself that would be a darker tone. That's me explaining to myself in the pencil sketch that, hey, when you get to color, that's a darker tone compared to the skin color. And ink stage, because I know that that's going to be a darker tone, I've made each stage of character design leads you to the final steps. So you can remember those things because you're explaining this to yourself of what this character is and who they are. And so each stage gives you a little bit more information on how you're going to finish the next stage. So I ended up really liking the idea of having like some bandages that he kind of like taped and cobbled together to hide his hair. Again, some wispy. Everybody gravitates towards stuff that they like. I love wispy hair. I like drawing like just little fluffs and tufts of it. And one, it creates a nice sense of movement, and it's just visually interesting to me. It's stuff I like to see. I think in books that I've seen and other artists, I gravitate towards that look, and I like it. So as we watch this, I want the new artists to remember that you're seeing somebody who has inked thousands upon thousands of drawings, and you've seen somebody who's made thousands and thousands of character designs. I don't think it's too intimidating. I don't think that what I do and draw and how I talk is intimidating, but I want the people who at any time would think, oh my gosh, it's going too fast, or I don't know, what this is or what this program is, or just really jump in and don't worry about the results at first. I was hampered and stopped and stymied from my own brain trying to make things perfect and trying to make it look a certain way, like a certain artist, like a certain studio, and it really hampered a lot of who I was early on in my stages. I know it's easier said than done, but if you can try to remember that what you're really trying to do is not draw like somebody else or do it like them, but get the meaty goodness of what they do. Whether it be fast and quick lines, whether it be the shape language, whether it be just the abandoned happiness, or like, wow, this person's art makes me feel happy. Or the creepy guys are like, I love creepy art. I love, giant skulls and blood and all that. Whatever it is that you gravitate towards, don't be afraid to, one, love it, and two, be okay with you not being in that stage yet when you see professionals or you see other people who have way more hours put in than you do. You don't see the thousands of bad drawings and artwork and starts and stops and all this kind of stuff. This is still the equivalent of Facebook and social media, which is a dangerous thing. I even shrugged the head here. Social media just shows you the best of the best and a curated version of what life is. So it's Hollywood. It's still this fake version. You don't get to see all of the missteps and the oops and how many times the art directors tell me, Brett, that's a bad choice. You made a bad choice there, or that doesn't work at all. You don't hear and you don't see any of that stuff. So I don't want you to be afraid about just being you and just figuring stuff out, and thinking that all these other artists that you see online aren't in the same position, that they don't think the same thing as you do, that they don't worry every day what they're bringing to the table and can they do it. And we're all in it together and we've all gone through it. And I'd say any artist that I know who still questions their validity makes them hungrier and sharper, and I see longevity in their career. So if you can get used to never fearing failure, you will succeed faster with that thought process. So try your thick to thin lines, really try to get out there and push yourself as an artist, try new mediums, try new tools, and see where it goes. I think you'll have some really surprising benefits, and all of it will be beneficial to your art career. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to go check out the book Draw, Brett Bean Breaks Down the Art of Drawing by 3D Total and Brett Bean. Thanks. Brett Bean! BrettBean.com!